Good evening. I'd like to call our board meeting to order and ask that you join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. And will you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you. Now I'll read our mission statement, and this is: the Waterloo Schools community commits to a comprehensive system of education and support to assure that each and every student will graduate prepared for college, career, and citizenship, as evidenced by continuing education, pursuing a career path, and contributing to a community. All right, so the first item on our agenda this evening is our new partnership recognition with Irving. And I see we've got Mr. Zach out there, and I'm going to invite Akwi to the microphone this evening to bring up our new partner. We're super excited. This is Heartland Vineyard Church.
Yes, thank you. It's good to see everybody tonight. And
Come up.
come on.
No one
come on
bites.
up. As we all know, we're a school district that absolutely values the opportunities that we have to collaborate with our community partners, and in this way, particularly with partners in ed. And so we are absolutely just delighted to welcome tonight Heartland Vineyard Church as our newest partner with Irving Elementary School. And I'll let Mr. Zimmerman, Principal Zimmerman, share a little bit about the new partnership.
I actually wrote something so you know it's going to be good.
Yeah. We're ready.
Suspense, right? Suspense. All right. So, embedded within Heartland Vineyard's mission statement, there was a specific part that I strongly connected with as a servant leader of Irving. So I read your mission statement, by the way. Heartland Vineyard is a church that loves people exactly where they are in their story. Our job is not to judge a person's past, but to help them realize the incredible destiny and God's calling has on their life. The reason that I connected to this is that our staff works tirelessly toward a commitment toward excellence. We want to ensure all students' needs are met and for them to be successful. So I'm honored that Heartland Vineyard wants to be a part of our Irving family, and we look forward to the partnership that can help our community flourish. So, thank you.
Great. Yay! And will you introduce the people that are here with you tonight? You guys don't have to say anything, but will you well, you do have to say something. Just say your name. Say hello.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Josh Paxton. I'm the lead pastor at Heartland Vineyard, and this is my wife, Steph Paxton. So we're glad to be here tonight.
Thank you so much for being a partner. We really appreciate both of you.
Thank you
Yeah.
for being here tonight. Could you guys tell us where you guys are located?
So we are located, we're back in Waterloo. So we were in Cedar Falls for a number of years in a building on Green Hill Road, and we're back within the past. I guess we've been in our new building for about 4 years now.
Okay.
And it's kind of kitty corner to Highway 63 Diner is the best way I can describe it. It's an industrial area.
Yep.
So it's right on the other side, over by kind of down by Love's truck stop.
Google's.
So
Google's is right across.
So we are back on mission. We were able to trade buildings with another church who took on our debt so that we could come back into Waterloo debt-free, back on mission, so we can really begin to pour our resources back into community. So that's what we've been focusing on. That's been the focus of the past really 3 years, is just 3 to 4 years has just been like, okay, how can we really come alongside of our community?
Excellent.
The pandemic has thrown us for a little bit loop, but we're not letting that stop us. We're excited about all that God has for us as we move forward. So
Great.
How did
welcome
you
back.
choose
And
Thank you.
Irving,
Thank
is,
you.
Irving is anxious to have you walk alongside.
we're excited.
So, thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I would also thank Laura Meyer here and Haley Bakula
Yes.
are here as well. And so thanks for being here.
Thanks,
Their
guys.
lead teacher. And Haley, you're second grade.
Second
Okay, I was
grade.
going to say third grade, but I didn't know if that was right. Okay, thank
Thanks,
you for being
guys.
here as well.
Yeah. Have a great night. They're going to go take some pictures, so. All right, the next item on our agenda is information from individuals and delegations. And from the looks of my boardroom, I'm guessing that everyone here is on the agenda, and so we do not have anyone to speak tonight. Is that correct? Okay, then I'll spare you all my little speech. And we can move on then to the consent agenda, which tonight consists of 4 items: the minutes of the September 27th, 2021 regular board meeting and the September 29th special board meeting. This is item B. Personnel appointments and adjustments, item C. Bills due and payable and bills paid between board meetings, item D. And then the West High varsity girls basketball travel to Illinois. That's item E. So I would entertain a motion to place those items on the table.
So move.
Thank you, India.
Second.
Second, Astor. And are there any items which board members wish to have removed?
Item E.
Item E, yeah, perfect.
And item C, Charlie.
And item C. Okay. Then all those in favor of approving items B and D, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, same sign. Chair votes aye, motion carried. That takes us then to item C, which is on page 6. And Lyle, you want to read it?
I move the Board of Education approve the personnel items as listed.
Second.
Thank you both. And discussion.
Yeah, just, I see we got about 7 new hires here. Where are we at in terms of having a final staff? And I assume we have the final numbers. When will the final enrollment numbers be
October 15th.
published? Okay. So, no changes are anticipated in terms of adding, subtracting staff to any of the schools at this point? Are we kind of 100% set?
The FTE is set, but we're still going to be doing quite a bit of hiring. We're still short when it comes to our paraeducators in particular. There will be some changes that we'll send to you next time as far as bolstering our subs in food service, para subs, and some other areas that I think the board has been talking about. So it'll come in that next meeting. The other thing you'll see probably intermittently is what we're trying to implement that we utilized in special ed last year was hiring ahead of time. And so there's a K6 or K5, excuse me, posting up right now that we are actively looking for positions not only for the next semester in January, but for the following year as well, just because we want to continue to implement the changes that we did as far as lowering class size. And there are a couple of situations, in our district with maternity leave and other leaves, we want to pay attention to those and just make sure we have some additional teachers be able to utilize in that way.
Okay. Go ahead.
Go ahead and finish. Can you explain what the BF behind the BIS position is?
Oh, behavior focused.
Okay.
So there's a particular, basically, that matters in the sense of what type of classroom that this particular BIS is supporting. And so behavior focused or extended core or some of the other programs that we have for our BIS positions.
So the district building sub, is that a full-time position?
It is.
Okay, and that's the standard salary that we do for a full-time sub, right?
That's correct. Remember that we show you the full salary amount. However, they are paid the prorated amount because this person didn't start at the beginning of the year.
Right, okay. And then I just had a question about job title. So head building engineer, the salary is the same as the permanent sub-custodian. And then I've seen just, if you go through, like, is there a head building engineer at every building? Have we gotten to the point where that's been changed and that title is on somebody at every building?
No, I mean, in general, that's not at the elementary level. I mean, you're looking more at the secondary level with the
Okay.
head building engineer in particular.
Okay.
And so that would be the only differentiation between the two different buildings.
Okay,
Did I answer your question? I felt like I left it out there. I mean, the head building engineer is a position where, it's really how we look at engineering, in the sense of additional maintenance duties outside of the normal custodial role. And so if you're looking at, helping not necessarily change the entire HVAC system, but, help maintain or some other pieces, electrician type of duties and things along those lines, that's what that head building engineer would do. And so that's why you
Right.
really see both those roles at the secondary level because of the nature of the building, the size of the building, the different pieces of the building that's different than an elementary.
Right, I guess I just wondered why their salary is the same if the head building engineer has a higher job duty.
It could have just been when they started. I mean, this particular individual could have started and be new in comparison to the sub coming in or the permanent sub custodian coming in. That's
Okay.
the only reason.
So permanent sub, they just go to a different building every night?
Yeah, so we have permanent sub positions for a couple of different reasons, but mainly it's because we don't want to ever have a situation where, a building isn't being cleaned or
Right.
something on those lines. And so those permanent sub positions really step in and make sure that we have what we need. And so what you see as a permanent sub custodian is what you see as a starting pay for a regular custodian. And so that's where I can see how it's, you're looking at this and you're like, hey, why are we paying a sub in the same way of an engineer? But from our vantage point, that permanent sub is really a starting custodian,
Okay,
just not a head building custodian, but that has to move around the buildings.
right, okay. So for every middle school and the high schools, then you do have somebody who is, they have that designation as head building engineer. I'm just talking about the title itself. I know that there's somebody who kind of does that, but
Correct.
I've just seen different names over time.
Yeah, correct. And typically, I think the major issue that's happening here is we don't have that many people leave. I mean, so you haven't seen it in a while, and this is actually
Okay.
probably the first time that I can remember it's actually come up.
Okay.
But again, the other thing that I would point to as far as 1825 as well is that remember that the AFSCME group's on a salary schedule. And so that's where the starting pay is for these type of positions, and that's why you see it be the same.
Gotcha.
Sorry, I wasn't understanding your question. I was making sure that I wanted to answer it right.
I think that was everything. Thank you.
I just had a quick question about, you mentioned class sizes. So how are we doing with virtual? How are we doing with virtual?
that over here. No, you just said virtual. I was like, over here.
So just curious, how are we doing with virtual? Is it steady as far as student numbers, teachers, the influx, things of that nature?
We are steady. We are getting a few, not very many, additional requests each week, almost 100% for medical issues, but elementary has been extremely steady with the few requests that we're getting are at the 612 secondary level.
The only thing I would add is that we are working through some staffing challenges, and that's not any different than, just a normal building having leaves and whatever the case may be. I want to give a lot of credit for Dr. Mohorn and Ryan Christopher because they've done a wonderful job of providing additional learning opportunities that we were, concerned about. Problem came up, and then they were able to address it immediately to make sure that our students are still getting consistent learning in the event that a teacher is out in a sub. Won't be in the building. Because remember, virtual is a little bit different than, in-person learning in the sense of in-person learning from an elementary standpoint, you may be able to shift the kids into the other classroom to make sure that instruction is currently, occurring at the same time. With virtual, it's a little bit different. And so, again, Dr. Mohorn and Ryan Christopher stepping up and making sure that there is continuous instruction happening in that absence has been transformative to the entire process.
Okay. What's the ratio? Yeah, what's the ratio look like as far as number of students to a virtual teacher?
Depends on the grade level.
Okay.
The largest in K-5, because, 612 is different because they're but K-5 where we're providing we're providing instruction. I think the largest class is 23, which is actually a perfect, and that's, I believe, 5th grade.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
So how are we measuring student participation on the virtual and what's it look like?
We measure by the, we measure by the long and out, it's called positive attendance.
Okay.
That we measure by, and Ryan Christopher, who is the administrator over the elementary virtual, he's definitely keeping a close eye. And then for our 612 virtual, where we have more teachers, Carrie Whelan and Henry Shepard are doing the monitoring of the attendance. And I think we can talk about this at a different time, but we have come up with some criteria. I think we talked about it a few meetings ago on if we have kids who are not participating, then what? And we've come up with like a rubric system of, okay, what are we going to do if and when we have students who are not participating in the levels that they need to?
And I would just say, I agree with you that we're actually on a personnel, we have that on the floor right now, so no offense,
Nope,
but
that- I'm-
I think that we should, I mean, Lyle, finish what your thought is, but we actually have the personnel appointments and adjustments on the agenda that we are needing to move on. And so if you have more questions about this, I think we either need to bring it back, or we need to put it in the weekly update, or something like that, so, because we're crossing into some areas that are not on our agenda tonight. So, Lyle, did you have another follow-up question?
Well, I guess I'm just, at some point, there's a trigger point, and my question is, how close are we to it? And, you know, what's our escalation plan in terms of those students that aren't?
And I would bet you can get us that information. Yep.
Okay.
Okay, super. All right, are there any other questions regarding the personnel appointments and adjustments that are on the table at this point? No? Okay. Then all those in favor of approving the personnel appointments and adjustments, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, same sign. Chair votes aye, motion carried. That takes us then to item E, which is the basketball team travel to Illinois. And the recommended motion here is that the Board of Education approve travel for West High School girls varsity basketball team to play Johnsburg High School in Johnsburg, Illinois, and visit the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago, Illinois on December 4th through the 5th of 2021.
So moved.
Thank you,
Second.
Sue. And a second, Astor. And discussion, I know that we have Dr. Pappas with us here this evening, if people have questions. This looks like a great trip and a great opportunity for our players.
I was wondering how Johnsburg High School was chosen.
Great, okay, so she stole your question?
Well, I went to the internet and looked for teams in Illinois that needed a game and that would be close to a northern suburb so that we could stay in the northern suburb and then go into the city the next day. And Johnsburg's about 45 minutes from the northern suburb, but basically on our way to Chicago. So I gave them a call and they agreed to play us, which was very nice on their part.
Are they size-wise comparable or bigger, smaller?
About 600-700 high school. So just probably be a 3A, 4A in Iowa, where we're a 5A. But they've had pretty good success over the years. They told me they've won a couple regional championships lately, and so I haven't really researched them that much, but we will before we play them.
So the motivation here was the educational experience.
Both. We needed one game to complete our schedule. What happened was we were scheduled to play in a tournament, a shootout in Johnston, but it never came to fruition. And so and they just notified me in the fall here. And, you know, speaking honestly, because of our stature, a lot of teams don't want to play us, especially in Iowa. And so I thought, we've taken these trips many times over the years, over the last 30, 40 years, all the way from Raleigh, Durham, Pickering in Ohio, and Chicago during our season. And so I thought we've got a fine group of young ladies that we need another game. We can complete our schedule and also at the same time make it a really educational experience for them. Visiting the Museum of Science and Industry, taking a subway ride, Wrigley Field. Actually, believe it or not, I kind of grew up in Chicago in my summers. My mother's from Chicago there, 3311 North Clark Street, so.
We'll go buy that house now.
So what do you mean complete the schedule? You have to play X number of games? And if
You're
you-
allowed to play 21 games in a season. We had 20, so we had one opening. You don't have to play it, but we
Okay.
always try to fill our schedules, and all of our sports teams, most of our coaches feel that way,
Okay, all right.
and that's set by the state.
Well, and your funding's coming from your boosters, correct?
Pardon me?
Your funding's coming from your boosters, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
as Michael will tell you, we probably have the largest revolving account balance of any sports team in the district for many reasons, and even some of my past players have donated very generously without even us asking to make things like this happen for us. So correct. Comes out of our revolving or fundraising account.
So the school vans, those are district vans and district-driven?
Correct, and then we pay for the gas out of the
So
revolving account.
they're driven by,
District certified coaches, correct.
oh, they're driven by the coaches?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
We won't let the students drive.
right.
Don't we have driver?
I mean, it's a similar process that we use for all of our sports teams and even sometimes field trips and things of that sort. Our licensed coaches drive the vans.
Okay, very good.
And I was glad to see that you're not missing any school either.
Yeah.
No,
So
it's
that
not at
was
all.
awesome.
Not at
Yeah.
all. It's a Saturday and a Sunday.
Yep.
Well, I think it's great to get the kids, you know, we'll showcase down the state, you know.
Yeah.
Iowa's pretty restrictive as a state on that. I mean, you go to other states and, you know, you hear about baseball teams going and they're spending their spring break in Florida playing in tournaments, and, you know, we can't get out in the Midwest really to compete against anybody and really showcase our athletes and some of these other, like other states can, so I think it's,
Right, there's rules pertaining to all those, but since it's a contiguous state right next door, it's just like Dubuque going across to play Galena or
Right.
somebody like that, or Nebraska.
Quad Cities, yeah.
The state grants us automatic certification to do that.
Good.
Thank you for doing this, Dr. Pell.
Oh, yeah, no, it's a great
Be great.
trip, and we'll take a lot of pictures. It'll be a great memory for all involved.
Awesome. Send us some pictures.
Oh, yeah, we will.
If
And
you
maybe
need
bring me
any
a
more
slice of pizza.
chaperones, there might be. Yeah.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for your
And
support.
can you find out if it's gonna be televised or?
It might be live
Live
streamed,
stream?
it
Okay.
might be live streamed, you know, and then once I find that link, then we'll share it.
Share
out.
it. Okay. Super.
Thank you.
All right. Then all those in favor of approving the varsity girls basketball team travel to Illinois, please signify by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed, same sign. Chair votes aye, motion carried. That takes us to our next item, which is item F, and this is the 2022-2023 Program of Studies for High School. And the recommended motion here is that the Board of Education approve the 2022-2023 High School Program of Studies course catalog.
So moved.
Thanks, Stacy. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, India. And I know that we've got Sharice Ortman here this evening, and you all have a copy of this. It was in your board exhibit, so.
Before Cherie starts,
Oh,
I just want to.
sorry.
No, that's okay. Nope, that's okay. I just wanted to remind you all, I think it was about 2 years ago now, we did a board workshop with you all. And during that board workshop, we talked about some of the major changes. Those are the last time that we had any really significant changes. So although there are some minor changes in this one, that 2 years ago was the big overhaul. So there's,
Okay.
every year there will be different nuances and some little different changes here and there. The meat and the majority of this program of studies is still the same since
Okay.
the 2 years ago when we did the in-depth workshop with everyone.
Got it. Thank you.
Will you point out the minor
Yeah.
changes?
Yep,
She's
and they're
got it.
on the, I believe they're on, do you have the document, India? This is sort of the cover page,
They're in that noteworthy revisions.
and I can go over them for you if you'd like me to.
Yeah, especially, I didn't understand the deleted course, Algebra 1, Part 1, and Algebra 1, Part 2.
I can talk about that. Do you want me to read the background? I typically do, so you get an overview, but it's up to you. All right.
Sure.
All right, so as Dr. Mohorn said, every year we go ahead and do a revision for the review and approval that reflects the transformative changes and the continuous improvement journey of our high school programming. It's used as a reference tool for scheduling students into appropriate courses and programs, informs students, parents, and community members about courses, curriculum, policy, et cetera, and provides transitional information for students moving from middle to high school. Our goal is to approve the program of studies early to ensure a timeline of modifications, dissemination, and communication. The program of studies reflects the work of several departments within education services and our innovative teachers and administrators. The comprehensive document mirrors the wide range of diverse learners through balanced and opportunity-based courses. Please note that the Board of Education approval is based on this conceptual nature of the first draft of the program of studies. We'll continue to make minor revisions as needed. District course numbers, SCED codes revisions. We'll also continue to make sure that the region's admission index is current and make slight adjustments to any WCC courses or pathways as needed. So if you look down at noteworthy revisions on the front, you can see what's been added. Career Center, I do put caps under that. I think you're familiar, that's a Cedar Falls program. But we include that into our program of studies since we do have a partnership and we have several Cedar Falls students coming to the Career Center. The courses added to general content areas, the IB Extended Essay, you can see that was updated because now it's college accepted. Advanced Health and Fitness, which was a compliance. We needed a year-long health course, and we only had a semester course. And then Women's Studies, there is a bit of a typo there. And that was an interest in additional elective opportunities at East High, but also offered at West High. And I do have Jason Knittel, who's the department chair for social studies at East High here, if you want to know more about the women's studies and where that interest came from. And then you can see on item 3, the course is deleted, and then other revisions. And you might want to, I think you talked about this a little bit, the Algebra 1 Part 1 and Algebra 1 Part 2. So if there's some there that you want to continue to talk about. We dropped some other ones. You can see the rationale behind it. So I'll let you look through that.
What was, go through the Algebra 1.
Sure.
Yeah, can you elaborate on what that means for pacing and that sort of
Yep,
thing? Thank you.
absolutely. So this was a course that we were going to remove last year from the program of studies. And we looked at it based on equity of pacing. So when students get into Algebra 1, Part 1, and Algebra 1, Part 2, they're in it for 4 semesters, 2 years. So we looked at that and we broke it down into if students need some extra support, there's a pre-algebra course that they could take as 9th graders. And there's another course that comes out of, I think it's a supplemental course that kids can take that really goes deep into some of their mathematical or algebraic gaps. But what we didn't want to do is have a student who maybe by the end of the first year was starting to show some rapid improvement, but they only have half the year of the algebra standards. So therefore, they have no other option. They can't go into geometry. They're kind of stuck at that Algebra Part 2.
So basically what it was is we had students who were taking 4 semesters to take Algebra 1.
Instead of
And
2.
it's normally
Instead of
2.
2, it's instead of
Right.
2.
Right.
On general pacing.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, yep.
Correct.
To take Algebra 1 and 2.
Nope,
Yep.
just Algebra 1, and they were taking 4 semesters.
So what
Yep.
normally happens is Algebra 1, 8th or 9th grade, then geometry, then Algebra 2. And we also looked at, one of the concerns we had is if I'm a freshman and I'm taking algebra for 2 years, and I want to go to the Career Center, and I want to take some of the courses especially that require geometric thinking, I haven't had any geometry yet. So we wanted to make sure that we didn't put kids into a rut where they were stuck, because at the end of 1 year, they've only gone through half of the algebra. And we can't assume that just because you have some algebraic gaps coming out of 8th grade math doesn't mean that you won't pick up on those concepts within that year.
So when did we extend a 1-year course into 2 years?
I don't know the history on that, Lyle. Do you, Stephanie?
Or the rationale for it?
It was long ago that we had I can't even, Jane, you might even remember, I mean, it was been for years and years and years that we had that, and so we were, instead of ripping it out from under kids, really preparing and saying, this is what's best for kids, and now we're going to stop and not take 2 years. If they need additional supports with Algebra 1, then that's our job to support those instead of extending it for 2 years.
Okay.
Are there a lot of kids doing it anyway?
I can check
More
with
than
Steve
should,
Winters and
more
let
than
you
should,
know.
I mean, more
Yes.
than, in my opinion, no one should. We should be
Okay.
providing the supports over the 1 year if they need some scaffolding, but not a large number.
And so that would be determined when they do that in 8th grade, when they're looking at the 4-year plan, you'd be able to see where their math skills are and where they would need additional help. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yep. And we can provide, one of the things we talked about is that students now have that built-in time all the high school students have that built-in seminar time. So if the math concepts are what they really struggle with, we could put that right behind the algebra, and they could go deep into some of those gaps that they have. So then we could, if we need that extra time, we have it built in instead of assuming that it's going to take 2 years for a student to finish algebra.
Is this student-driven, or does the teacher recognize that the student needs help, or does the student have to reach out because they're struggling, or does the teacher recognize, how are they getting the extra help other than the 4 semesters?
Well, quite a bit of it comes out of special education. And so instructional strats look at their plans, and they look at some of the assessments, and they see how discrepant they are. And they do sort of a gaps analysis of what they would need to know to be prepared for the next level of math. They make those decisions in 8th grade before they even start high school.
So is that what you're seeing, that the discrepancy is that you're seeing our special ed kids and our English second language, we're seeing those, our group? okay.
Correct, correct. Are there any other ones on the adds or deletes? I'll let you glance at that.
You had mentioned the women's studies. Could you kind of provide some detail for that course?
Good evening. My name's Jason Cannell. I teach at East High. And equity is one of the strongest points that we've talked about in our district. Oh, excuse me, I gotta take this off. Equity is one of the strongest points in our district. And because at East High we have a strong leader who teaches African American experiences, and his name's Chris Timms, does a wonderful job. And so one day I just thought, it's like, you know, we need to reach out to also the females in the building as well. Allow them the opportunity to learn about their history of the women's struggles, women's rights, taking a look at different aspects. I'm not talking about just focusing on the concept of feminism or anything like that. I'm talking about the women, how they impacted our history. And so I asked my female students and male students in the classroom, and majority-wise, they started off right away saying, yeah, this sounds like an opportunity. Since you already teach this stuff in U.S. history class, can we dive a little more into it? So then I asked Charisse about it, and she came up with an idea of sending out a survey to all my students, and that's what I did in 9th, 10th, and 11th grade. Seniors, I didn't, take them into consideration. And majority-wise, it was sitting about 75%, and I still have all that data, about 75% said yes, they'd be highly interested in taking a class focused on women's studies. It was, and so with that, I started taking a look at curriculum that was designed in other high schools. So I started filling out paperwork on that, which I have, and then taking a look at college courses and how it differs from high school to college. In a nutshell, that's how it's been looked at. And it all stems down to equity, and I feel that females also deserve an opportunity to be educated for their history.
What other high schools, you said other schools, what other schools offer this?
Oh, off of this, I looked at states. I just typed it in, did a Google search, and I found some schools in California, one in, I think it was Chicago, Illinois, another one on the East Coast, Virginia, or somewhere around there, and that's about it.
Is this a one semester?
Yes, this would be a one-semester course.
And what curriculum did you end up choosing, or haven't we gotten that far yet? Okay.
We have not, because this is a little step-by-step process. And so once we can, if it's approved, then I can move on forward and start working on this.
So you mentioned equity. I guess I'm not sure I understand that. If you don't have anything equivalent for males, our graduation rate for females is significantly more than males. The number of kids in college, I think 60% are females, 40% are males. what are we doing for our young guys?
Well, I will give you an update on the data about that. It came out a couple weeks ago. Actually, more females have been enrolled in colleges for this year, 55 to 45% more females than males.
That's what I said. That's my
Yeah,
that's the
okay.
point.
I
So-
thought you said, okay.
So
And
shouldn't
with
we be
more-
focusing on the males?
Well, are we already not focusing on the
Well,
males?
isn't, yeah, that's
Well,
kind
then
of
why
our
are
main
they-
Do we
thing.
do math?
Then-
Do we recognize a lot of females in the students all the time, as in the classroom?
Well, when
Are
I
there
look at,
classes
when I look at
African
the,
American? No, is there African American experiences? Is that only directed at people of color? I
No.
mean, there's whites that can take it, Hispanics. It's a way to educate yourself, to be more inclined about what our culture's about. It's the same thing with the female course class. It's not directly just aimed at females, it's aimed at anybody, even males. I would sit in a female class just so I could understand my wife even better.
I would send my daughters in a heartbeat, because the general textbooks, we know they've been male-driven and they're male content, that's what it is. That's how history has been, white male. So I don't think that there's an issue just pulling together for one semester information that may even be in those textbooks, but is not being highlighted.
well, my point is males are falling farther and farther behind. When you look at the best of the class, you ever watch that? It's 80% females. When you look at, like I say, the college participation rate, trend is increasing females, decreasing males. When you look at the, the subsequent incarceration rates, mostly male. So I'm not sure I understand at all why you're focusing, why you don't have something, aren't proposing something for males.
Wouldn't that
I
kind
got-
of be
I
a
got
different- Yeah.
So just my opinion, I don't know, when you mentioned the course, I never thought male, female.
Right.
I didn't think that males weren't able to take it. I think
It's for
it's the
everyone.
female experience in the country, just like we have African American studies. It's a focus on the contributions of African Americans.
And it's for everyone, and it does
So
meet.
I never
Yep.
thought it would be, I never looked at it as just females in the classroom or anything like that.
Right.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Thank you, Astor. And also, I wanted to say, so when you look at the social studies standards, it does meet those standards. We'll sit down and do a deep dive of curriculum that's going to be best for this course if it's approved. And it's really for everybody. It's another elective. It's not a graduation requirement. So we're really speaking to the beautiful dynamics within our community, too, of what different options do we have for different students. So knowing that we conducted a survey and there was an interest, we want to make sure we have some more electives, too, at East High, and that was one that did come up from the survey. We'll also have Annalee Hollingsworth and Lizzie Zondo working on this with us, who
I
are
see what-
social studies teachers at both East and West.
I see what you mean, though, Lyle, that maybe there's different I mean, this class is just intended to teach history. It's not really to excel, but to get some other measures into place, if this is where we are, then that's what we need to do.
And it doesn't have to be the same class. My point is, though,
Right.
if you look at everything from graduation rate, probably the grade point level, you need to look at all this because the trend line, especially the last 5 years, has clearly been at the disadvantage of the males. And so we need to look at that. If we don't, then we're missing
Yeah.
a whole group of, potential graduates and affecting their success in life.
Lyle, I think, speaking as a female in a male-dominated position, I would tell you that I really think that we're talking about really having a course that talks about women studies because of women being a marginalized population. And so whether we're not necessarily talking about the performance, the bottom line is even if our males are graduating at a lesser rate, what I would tell you is males are still holding the predominant number of CEO positions. Women are still making 79% of what a man makes. There's still an equity gap between men and women. Now, I've not really felt that, but I know it's alive and well. So I think we're really talking about the marginalized population. And so even though females may be at the top of the class at a higher level, and they still may be graduating at a higher level, they're still holding far fewer positions of power as far as talking about the top levels. And that, I mean, that's been proved. I mean, there's a reason that I'm the first female superintendent of Waterloo Schools, so.
But you can't take today's data. I mean, you have to project it out 30, 40 years.
So I was going to go ahead and just read the summary.
You can't take the data from students that graduated 50 years ago and say that applies today, because it doesn't. There's changes that have been made.
So I just want to read, I'm
I'm
sorry.
sorry. I just wanted to say that I love how it got under where it talks about grad requirements,
Yep.
that we cleaned the language up and got all the, if you graduated in 2021.
Yes, it's about
just-
time.
It looks
Yeah.
good and
It's
it's.
way
it-
better,
you.
clearer.
Yeah, it's aesthetically pleasing and easier
Good.
to read.
Well, I was going to tell you on page 90, the summary is, so just so if you want to conceptualize it, this course is designed to introduce students to women's studies as an interdisciplinary field of knowledge. Women's studies strives to provide equal education to both women and men by making the study of the history and culture of women the central focus of concentrated scholarship and learning. The purpose of the course is to involve students in the ongoing dialogue of women's experiences and women's socialization by sex, class, color, and culture. Gender studies courses examine the history, politics, economics, and/or culture of gender in U.S. society. So we do have a national SCED code registry, and that summary is pretty consistent.
That's on page 92, Board, if you want to see the description.
I'm sorry, I did do some updates, so the new one I brought around.
Yes, 90 or 92, depending on whether you're looking at the old copy or the new copy. Nope, you're right.
This is my book.
It's 90 in there.
My book.
The new
is-
one says 90, the old one says
Sorry.
92.
We had a
Sorry,
few
sorry.
revisions.
Yeah, pardon me.
Are we on a different topic? Are
All
we
right,
on
Board, are there
another?
anything further for questions for?
I did have a question for
Sharice,
Don
go
on this-
ahead. That's fine.
this one.
Go right ahead.
What's our, I don't know, maybe Stephanie or, what's our percentage of kids that are now going the pre-IB integrated life science versus the traditional physical science, earth, space, and biology route?
Well, I'm going to be doing an advanced programs update early November, so you'll have all the numbers on our pre-IB courses. Right now, the pre-IB integrated life science has, I think, 2 or 3 full sections at West and 1 or 2 full sections at East. Remember, we created that to compact in 3 sciences to give kids more opportunity by the time they're juniors to take additional science courses. And it's increasing at the Career Center. Some of the courses do require some science background.
So are we seeing higher participation? in
Correct.
that? We are.
Correct. Our pre-IB integrated life and pre-IB integrated physical sciences have full sections and more than 1 full section. So I'll get you all those numbers in early November. Thank you, Jesse. Now, remember, that was kind of rolled out because the first group that was able to take that course will graduate next year.
Right.
So that's a newer
Pretty-
course.
still pretty
it's
recent,
new.
yeah.
And it was on the heels of us removing the advanced science from the middle school.
Yep.
And it was the increase in the science requirements, and we were concerned kids weren't getting to a level where they could take things like AP or IB chemistry and biology and physics and/or be prepared for some of the nursing courses at the Career Center and human anatomy.
On page 13, under the pass, no credit option, requirements are you have to be enrolled in at least 6 courses, not including PE, and then there can only be 4 in the 4 years of school. I'm just wondering if that discourages participation in the Career Center courses in particular, but any course that's kind of exploratory for someone that's, has a good grade point or is focused on their grade point as well as their overall experience. And it just seems like it might be kind of limiting that there would be opportunity if someone wants to take welding or something. They probably, if they've never welded before, not sure at all what kind of grade they may end up with.
So
That might be discouraging to take those courses. So I'm just wondering if we might want to loosen that up a little bit.
Per Senior Plus guidelines, they cannot take a concurrent course past no credit.
That's
You
my
can't
point.
audit it, you can't take it past no
There's-
credit.
There's law behind that. So in the example you gave would be legislated. If it's a concurrent credit, it cannot be audit. You can't just go to take the class for no reason. Like sometimes somebody will say, I've got a full schedule, I'd just like to sit in on this class. It's actually against policy, law, that you can't do that. And you also can't take it pass, fail, yeah.
Yeah,
And
there
same
was,
with liberal
So,
arts
a
courses.
concurrent credit, so anything that has a college course, college credit attached to it, the law requires that you
Yeah, right.
cannot do it that way.
Which are
Like a
90,
Hawkeye class, or, you know what I mean, where they're dual enrolled.
right. Which are
Yes.
like
Oh,
90% of the Career Center
Which
courses.
the Career Center classes are,
Correct.
yeah.
so what's the workaround there?
Lobby at the state level for the law to change. I mean, right now, it's following the law. Senior Year Plus governs that. That's not a local decision, and it's actually precluded that a district cannot violate that. I mean, that's specifically laid out in the law.
Why can't they audit one, though? I guess maybe.
That's in there too, and that doesn't make sense either.
Yeah.
So like if you had all your graduation credits and you said, hey, I don't want to take this class, I just want to sit in on it, you actually cannot do that,
No.
and that is actually called out in the law.
Yep.
And I thought that was weird that you could, because, yeah, you
And-
cannot, and you can't, if it's offered for credit, you have to take it for credit or don't take it. It doesn't make any sense.
And we double check that, so just so you know, when kids enroll in concurrent, which are Hawkeye, DMAC, or Kirkwood, most of ours are our partnership with Hawkeye. We have to double check, everything's double checked before a kid enrolls. We have to make sure that they're registered for it on both ends. We have to make sure that it's for grade, it's not for audit.
Which
So-
you do very well as a parent. I just want to say thank you, because that stuff is slick. It just gets done.
Well, it's a lot of people helping, so thank you.
So what we could do is, if they passed it, okay, then we could give them their average grade point for a grade. There's always a workaround of some kind.
Possibly, I don't know. I mean, he's saying that you just make up a grade for them and you just give them the grade point that they had. I don't know if that's the way it works because it's actually a Hawkeye class. So
Right.
you'd have to get Hawkeye to agree to say, we'll just forego the grades for that class because it's actually their course.
Right, and the teachers submit the grades to Hawkeye, and then we have them on our transcripts as well.
It's got to be a way.
Keep thinking. By tomorrow morning, he's going to have the workaround.
Right, but so it's not like AP where they have the
yeah.
option where they can take it and not get the credit. Is that what, like with Hawkeye, if you don't pass, you don't get the credit, right? A concurrent class? Like
Correct.
AP, like if you don't pass the AP test to get credit, that doesn't matter. You still get credit, have you taken the
Right.
course?
Get a
Those
Not
are-
high school, not college credit, but you still get your high school credit.
Right, and those are two different things. So
Right, that's
taking the AP
right.
and IB exams are for the colleges for transferable credit.
Right.
That's different than the grade that you would get from taking a high school class.
Okay,
Right.
how about the 6-course rule? We can change that, can't we? It would be hard to take 6 courses and
Be enrolled in 6 courses, excluding that part, number 1.
yeah.
I don't know, isn't that laid out also in Senior Year Plus? I feel like that's in there.
Well, and not just senior year plus, so some of these come from the state. These are some state requirements. So what I'll do, Lyle, is I'll look back again and which ones were bound by the state for these, the criteria that we put in this policy. So I didn't write the original policy, but I'm sure it was Dr. Debbie Lee, and she's very thorough with the state criteria and matching it when we create our own policy. But I'll look that up.
I will tell you that the grade point for the students at WCC is higher when they take a WCC course. So the students might rather take a different class, no pass, fail, because the WCC students, that actually only helps their grade point to be at the WCC.
And
That's
so
the
you
truth.
know, we have a lot of safeguards in place that when a student's failing early, because as you know, any concurrent course that a student fails goes on their Hawkeye transcript and affects financial aid. To what degree, it depends, right? But we don't want to put any student at a disadvantage. So we have several people, including the teachers, who are always right there to say, what other support do you need? So I would say just really that very focused feedback on where students are and what supports they need when they're taking a concurrent class is a high standard.
And then can they drop the class if it's absolutely not going well?
We have a drop window for them, and when we drop that, We have that drop window through Hawkeye. It's expunged, does not go on their Hawkeye transcript. So we blast out the drop dates early and often, and we make sure that the counselors make note of that too.
But there are deadlines for dropping. If
Correct.
you are past that deadline, it is an
But,
F.
but
So
how far into the year is that to be?
Only just about 10 days usually, Lyle.
It's right away.
Gives them enough time to consume the syllabus and experience it.
Sherry Sue has a question, if you don't mind.
Sue?
Not on these added, are we off of that?
Okay, yes.
Okay. As far as the career interest academies, what are we using the career academies for?
You know, that was one that I hadn't circled back with. It's still in there. One of the things I will say at West High, it does help them sort of organize it. They have groups that really are concentrated to work with that group of students. And I know that they've been using it probably with a little bit more integrity as far as appointing students to that particular pathway based on some of our, I think there's some things that they do in 8th grade that give us some evidence, and they do some surveys on what you might be more interested in. So they've done more with like using them as houses. I'm not sure where East High is with that, but that's something that we probably need to rethink.
Well, I would think somewhat, because the next page shows the Waterloo Career Center and then like service areas, and like, they don't map it all over to like what the academies are.
Not at all.
And so, to me, that could be very confusing. And then with that same point, with Dr. Lindemann's letter on the first, like the dear students and parents, I'm all about the Career Center being, you know, showcased and highlighted, and that's a gem in our district, I feel. And in the bullet point that we continue to enhance our Career Center, okay, it says 17 programs, and then over in the, well, I guess it'd be page 8, it's not numbered, though, it's the table of contents. Under the Career Center, there's 18 programs listed. And like, there's inconsistencies, like in the letter, it says pre-K, and under what we offer, it says K to 12. So is it PK or is it K to 12? You know, I mean, yeah. But I just feel like, you know, that's our showcase. To me, I mean, I really think the Career Center is a huge selling point, not the only selling point, but a big selling point. And I just think that they should map correctly.
Sure.
You know, to showcase correctly what we're giving, you know, like, some I've seen that they kind of tried to combine, which I get that, but then let's combine it consistently. You know, I mean,
Right. Yeah, and I think Jeff is here if he wants to talk a little bit about why we kind of kept the 18 structure, even though we have 17 confirmed. And then I agree with your conversation about like some of our houses that we used to have. I think between now and when we finally do submit this on November 1st, that's a conversation that I can have with our Ed Services team and the high school principals.
okay. Thank you, because I just think, you know, why confuse people more that they've got to pick a career
Right.
academy, then they got to go to the Career Center, and then
Right.
they got to pick a program at the Career
Right,
Center,
right.
but they're in an academy. I mean, to me, it's a
Right.
little bit confusing.
Right.
Okay.
And then on the mapping, it's the health careers that are, it's the most confusing, because
the health cares are very much so.
you've got the nursing, which is a standalone on the first page, and then it's a subset of health careers. Dental doesn't show up at all on the original, so that just needs to be mapped, so it's, can be followed.
And then like financial services.
Yeah.
Consistent either place, so.
I just,
Well,
really not,
get it cleaned up. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
no, and really nothing particular in the course catalog, but just my continued advocacy for getting some pre-engineering stuff back into the curriculum. We're lacking there compared to other districts.
Exactly.
So Sharice, is it new that, for the honors diploma, that they can take CTE courses to count as their, to count towards those 10 semester-long
No.
higher level? That's been there?
No, as long as they're concurrent. There's some CTE courses that just are general, but a concurrent course would be considered. So when we talk about college classes include concurrent, which are community
Right.
college. AP, IB, and PSEO, which are our UNI classes. So as long as there's the combination of those, and sometimes if it's a concurrent course, you need to take 2 to get the 1 full year.
Right.
Right,
But
because
so
you have to have 5 full years or a combination of that.
I guess wasn't, I
Yep.
didn't think about CTE being
Yeah,
part of
we
it.
have.
That was one of
Yeah.
the reasons that Josie didn't use the Career Center.
Oh, yeah.
Because she
Okay.
was working towards her honors diploma. And can I just throw one thing out, just as a, can we please have cords back for kids who get an honors diploma? Because it was like a bummer. They get up there
Right.
and there's nothing anymore. You know, they
I know,
used
there
to-
were their stoles, but yes.
Well, that's if they're in honor
Oh,
society.
Oh, the honors diploma, instead of just doing the embossed on the diploma?
Yeah.
We had a conversation about this a few years ago. We could revisit it, but I think we got to the point where everybody was sort of, it looked a little overdone. We were doing so many chords, and we were doing so many different things. So we were trying to say at what point, but I understand what you're saying about the honors diploma. And it could have been that because the seal's embossed and it's indicated in their program, that might have been sort of the return for that, but I understand that. Something that we could definitely talk about again.
Yep. Thank you.
And congratulations to your daughter.
Thank you. We appreciate all those, and I know we'll get some of that stuff cleaned up.
We will.
So,
Yep.
okay.
Okay, thanks,
November
everyone.
1st, right? We got a
Pardon?
couple weeks.
Pardon?
November 1st.
November 1st is
So-
when we send it to print, yeah.
Perfect.
And that's just to keep up with, we're already getting into the middle schools, and
Yep.
kids will be scheduling.
People working on next year,
Thank
yep.
you.
Okay. All right, then all those in favor of approving the 2022-2023 Program of Studies, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, same sign. Chair votes aye, motion carried. That takes us to our next item on the agenda, which is the LEA Certified Annual Reports. And the recommended motion here is that the Board of Education place on file the Certified Annual Report, the Special Education Supplement, and the Annual Transportation Report as required by the Iowa Department of Education.
So moved.
Thank you, Sue. And a second? Second. Thank you, India. And discussion, I can turn this over to Michael Coughlin, who is our CFO, and he can walk us through some of the background.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thanks.
I think that is an important point to understand, that these 3 reports are all approved together, and they are all due the same date. You can't submit any of them without the other, because what this really is the Certified Annual Report, or the CAR that we affectionately call it. That is the comprehensive measurement of the finances. Special ed then is within those numbers. It's not in addition, because actually part of the special ed expenditures are just prorations of other expenses within the district that apply to special ed, that are necessary for it to function. So just to give you a little clearer view on that, you can certainly see special education teachers and paraeducators being direct costs of special ed. But then we also have the special ed director, and we have admin support people that support them, and we have the HR department and the business department and the ed services department that support that. So what it does is it allows what they call general purpose expenditures to be applied to the students. So it's not an additional expense. It's just recognizing that special education cost is not limited only to teachers and paras. So it's a formula of, so when you think of the 3 levels of special ed students, with 1 being the least restrictive, and 2, and then 3 being the most restrictive, the more serious the level is, the less general purpose expense there are, because most of the attention to those students are direct special ed teachers, the paras, and the actual work that goes on. When you do a level 1, they may have a minor disability, and they have a lot of general function of the day that is offered to all kids, and they are covered by that. So the general purpose expense for a level 1 is a higher percentage than a level 3 because of the severity of what their need may be. But the point that I wanted to make with this is the annual, certified annual report is the comprehensive totals of all of the expenditures and revenues by all the different funds. But within Fund 10, special education is built into that. It's part of it, part of those numbers, and so is transportation. It is part of those numbers, but both of those functions are very intricate and detailed, so the state wants that information pulled out so they can also measure that. Because, you know, it's not hard to understand that the special ed needs in districts vary immensely. And it can only take 1 or 2 students that may be high-cost students that can vary how a district is affected by special ed students. Transportation is the same. Waterloo has a very small footprint. Buses don't travel that far, and they don't travel that long compared to a country district that has to go miles in between students. So to try and, I mean, it even goes back to the legislature of saying for them to understand what a school needs in a budget differs with every district based on different criteria. And special education and transportation are 2 of those big issues. So that's why they have pulled it out to highlight it for understanding and clarity. And then when they are dealing with that as far as if Waterloo is talking about transportation or Western Dubuque is talking about transportation, we're on opposite ends of the spectrum. But you know, and what I have said with many different financial exhibits is every number has a story. Just like every board agenda that comes up, the item, every situation has a lot of background behind it. You just exhibited that in the program of studies discussion. Or bring Matt up here for technology and the questions go on and on. So that's what we try to break down and pull out so it can be understood at macro levels and at micro levels, depending on what you need to know to make a decision. So I really didn't want to say that much to start this, but that's why these reports are done together. And they are programmed together in the state's reporting system. So some of the numbers are just pulled automatically. We used to have to do it all, and they had to try and match it and so on, but now technology provides for that. So I just want to go through the 3 reports and just highlight a couple of things because there's a lot of numbers on there and all of the funds are represented, and you may have an interest in one thing and not another, and it's certainly something that you can send an email, have a question, whatever, and we can get into it, or explain it. But I'm just going to kind of describe the exhibits that are here. And some of the exhibits overlap because you'll find the same information in a couple of different reports, but it's done in a different format. again, to bring some clarity of pulling things out for what people need to see and how districts are compared to each other. And we'll look at a pretty good example of that in just a minute or two. So on page 26 is just a detailed list of all the different types of revenues that come into all of the different funds. And just going off the general fund, at the top you have the local revenue, and then the state revenue, and then federal revenue, and then some other miscellaneous categories. And in 2021, that we just finished, the revenues for the general fund were just under $153 million. And we'll do some comparison here in a little bit as well. But as you look at that statement, that is what is composed on that schedule. By fund, by area it comes from, and then the totals for each one. The balance sheet on page 27 is really like a financial statement of a company. It's a period of time, June 30th, that says, as of that date, what do you have in the bank? And then what do people owe you? And what do you owe other people? And the biggest representation we have of that is we end our financial year on June 30th, but teachers are paid in July and August from that year, from 21. So we have the liability of 2 months of salary with a lot of our teachers. So when you look at that, on page 27, up in the top left-hand number, the cash in the bank in the general fund was just about $42 million. But by the time all the ins and outs happen, you go down to the yellow line at the bottom and it drops to 29 million. So it's a period of time that we have to measure because time never stops. And we have to pick that date and do all of the calculations to see where we're at and compare it to other places. And it does make it a little tricky with federal dollars because we are getting a lot of that, and even more so now in the last few years. But our fiscal period is July 1 to June 30th. Federal is September 1st to August 31st. So the dates don't even line up, and they want reports, and we're not finished, so we're always carrying things forward, and makes it a little messy to make that all work, but it does. And one thing I just wanted to, and I guess I'll get that on page 29, the treasurer's report on page 28 is just a very simple version of what we just went through. What the beginning balance was, revenues, expenditures, what's the end. And this is dealing with cash and fund balance, not with authority. And 29 is kind of a summary of this, a little more broken down than page 28, with the revenues on top, the expenditures on the bottom, and I would have given you a report that was a little more detailed in the expenditure side, especially for the general fund, but the DE's program was broken down and we could not get that report, and we still can't. They're waiting to other reports to come in before they can provide that. So really what that report was, if you see all of the different funds across the top, there would be a detailed expenditure report for every one of those funds. But what I wanted to point out on this budget crosswalk is in the middle of the page, the beginning fund balance is there for all of the funds. And the beginning fund balance for the general fund has been around $18 to $20 million for several years. And this year we went up to just over 29 million. and that was the big cause because of the ESSER money being claimed. And we've had that discussion. So it did come to be in the practice that we're providing for that in the ESSER guidelines that we have. So that will continue. We've talked about that in the Finance Committee, that we will see our unspent balance probably grow for a couple of years, and then that money will be there as we have developed programs and play those out in the years to come. The transportation report on 30 is very basic, but one number that kind of stuck out to me was on line 13. It's a negative $194,000. That might raise a question in somebody's mind. And what that is a reimbursement from the state for the people in non-public schools that decide to drive, that qualify for busing, but they decide to provide that themselves. And there's a formula for miles and how many kids and all of that. So when the state sends us the money to pay the parents, then it comes off of our cost. But they also pay us, the state formula also pays us to transport the non-public kids that do ride. So we get a reimbursement for that as well. So it isn't just that the non-publics are riding and it costs us. We're actually getting reimbursed by a state formula for that. On page 31 is just a summary of the miscellaneous income that comes in. And the top part of that from 2 to 9 is really the big dollar amounts that come in as we talk about the budget and certified budget and the aid and levy and all of those things that will come up this spring or next spring. And then the remaining dollars coming from local, coming from some state funding, and all of the federal funding is miscellaneous income. It's not by formula. It's by individual district need that comes in. So the biggest part of this report is just explaining. We've talked about these numbers many times, and you get summaries of this in the board report, not every month, but periodically to keep you up to speed on where we're going and how we expect the year to come out. Is there any other questions on the certified annual report before I start on special ed?
On that same page, 31 there, line, I guess it's not line, yes, line 13. It says 20% of total expenditures. What's the significance of that number? Why do we care what 20% is?
Well, you have to look at 14 and 15 to get the significance. So when any district levies property tax, we have always been able to add cash reserve for cash flow, for new enrollment, for ELL deficit, for whatever asbestos, whatever may come into that. And up to this point, it has never been an issue that we had the capability to do that, because the formula is take 20% of your expenses, and then you compare to it your miscellaneous income. We have been nowhere near 20% of our expenditures with our miscellaneous income until now. So what this chart is telling us is that regardless of what cash reserve needs we may have, we can only levy $281,000. So basically, there will be no cash reserve on the tax askings this year.
Interesting.
It isn't, we've never had to deal with it before.
You can do
Okay.
special ed.
Special ed. Again, I'm just going to point out some things of what these forms represent, and a couple of things that I thought may be some interest to you. The first part of the report on page 32 identifies all of the students that we tuition out to other districts. So these are all the districts in 2021 that received special education students from Waterloo, and the number of them. This is not open enrollment. There can be some open enrollment mixed with that, but this is tuition out students that either by choice or by need, they've gone somewhere else. River Hills is one of those that fall under here.
So is there not a specific formula, like, for instance, if you look at Ankeny, we have one level 3, and Dunkerton one level 3, and Grundy Center one level 3. But those special ed costs are so much different, like Ankeny is $53,760, and Grundy Center is $34,13 for the same one level 3 special ed student.
With open enrollment, if someone open enrolls to another district, we send them the district cost per pupil that the state assigns, $7,048. That's what they get, plus a TLC, $350. Special education, if a student goes to another district or they come to ours, the other district gets charged actual cost. So if you have a level 3 student, and I'll go back to what I said at the beginning, every one of these students have a quite amazing story behind them. So it can be very costly. It can be, why an Ankeny person comes here, I don't know that. But there's probably, or we're sending somebody to Ankeny, there's a story behind that.
I get
But-
that, but it just seems like, like Rock Valley,
It's
only
actual cost,
okay,
whatever it is.
wow.
There is, that can be offset by Medicaid. So if we send somebody to Hudson and Hudson says, well, I'm filing for Medicaid and we got so much money, that does come off the bill. So when we had issues with some of the districts that wouldn't apply for Medicaid, they were basically taking money away from us. So just the tuition out for special education is $1.6 million.
And that includes the base, the 1.0, or
Yeah.
not?
It's just actual cost. If we had a student that cost $5,000 total, that's what we'd pay. We wouldn't even pay the state cost per pupil. It's actual cost, whether it's really high or really low, but 99% of the time it's over.
Okay.
Okay, so that is by district, and then page 33 is just saying how this is divided out by level. How much of that money is going per level. And there you see the general the general cost added as well, where you've got the direct cost of 1.2 million plus 300,000 of general purpose. And then there's some cases where administrators are covered by special ed. It's not very much, but some places qualify for that.
Is that number total of 112 on page 33, is that pretty steady or average number served?
The tuition out has been pretty steady. The costs differ because salaries go up
Right.
and
But as far as the students served, that's pretty
Yeah.
average.
there's also one other safety net that's called the high-cost student. And there is a level set by the state, and I think it's around $46,000 to $50,000. If that student costs over that, even with Medicaid helping, then the state will pick up the difference. So if you had a student that was just incredibly needy, and they cost $100,000 a year, the state would pick up what's ever over that threshold that they assign.
Well over half our cost is River Hills.
Yeah, I would think so, just off of memory. And just as you're looking at this, page 34, what that report is saying, even though we don't do any whole grade sharing in Part A, that's our certified special ed enrollment a year before. So there was 1,824 kids counted, but then when we had our program this year, 1,722 showed up. And special ed students fluctuate. It can be the other way. You get to count 1,700 and 1,800 show up. And that's why that's in fairness why it's really difficult for districts to keep a handle on special education. I didn't go into where all the students come from on page 35, but those are the students that tuition into Waterloo, 400,000 worth. And the level that they come from. The majority of them are coming on level 3. Page 36 just outlines how the revenue is calculated with the weighting, and that's including the 1.0 money. So we get revenue from the enrollment. It's usually between $28 and $30 million a year. Part B funds on 37 is just a federal grant that we get to use. 600,000. Yeah, 600,000 total. Medicaid on page 38 is what we get reimbursed. We have costs for all of these kids that qualify for Medicaid reimbursement. So that just offsets our expense by claiming that. So it did end up a little over 1.8 million. So actually they finished the year rather well. I didn't think they were going to get above 1.6, just because of all the changes that came with the COVID rearrangements. Screen 7 is a review of what we paid Durham for the special ed routes. And then page 40 and 41 is the summary of whether special education went negative or had a positive balance. And we did go negative last year, about 677,000, because it was one of those years that we had a low count and a high turnout. So we had to service the kids that were there, and it was, took us to a deficit. This year, as you saw, less kids actually came than what the count generated the revenue. So we were a little bit flush on that, plus there was also the ability to use some of the ESSER money. Some of the coaches are coming out of TLC rather than special education. And these things have to be looked at for exactly the reason Lyle brought up. We can't go negative and put it on cash reserve because we won't have any cash reserve. So it means managing your money in the best way that it can be served on all cases around. So that's what happens. So the revenues are on the top. The expenses are on the bottom, along with the tuition, along with the top part is just basically the hard cost, teachers and paras and supplies and contracted services, nursing, that kind of thing, busing. And in the middle, you get into the tuition in and out. I guess tuition in is at the top because we get the money. Tuition out is on the bottom. So with managing that within the funding ability that we had with ESSER this year and not wanting to go negative, we ended the year at 1.4 plus million. We can carry over 15% of the actual enrollment count of revenue. So you go back to that page where I said there was 29 million, you take a percentage of that. You can't take the revenue that you get from Medicaid or tuition in. So it's a formula. So it was like 1.66 that we could have carried over, and we ended up at 1.4. So that will not be an issue on the tax askings for next year. Any other questions on that? Okay. I did want to refer you to, my time's up, I know.
Sorry.
I did want to
That was the
refer
secret
you
buzzer.
to the packet that I gave you and look on the last page. I did not put this in the packet because they are not official. They are amounts given by the CFOs of all of these districts to say, here's where here's where our special ed report ended up. The state has to review all of that, and sometimes they do have adjustments. So it was not fair to publish something that wasn't through that. But you can see that some of the bigger districts to our south have some pretty hefty negative balances. And what happens with that? It goes directly on their tax askings. They can tax for all of that.
As,
Pardon? Yes, it's just like, it's in March and April.
Right, we had authorized for special ed.
Yep. Yep. So it's and you can look down here, and some of these are not that large of districts comparable, and they're 3 and 4 million over. Dubuque is probably the closest to our size. I don't know what their special ed enrollment is, so that's not really fair to say it's apples to apples. But size of districts, that's the closest. So they would be $5.8 million different than our ending balance. And again, there's many, many, many stories that go into these numbers.
so when you say taxing this amount through the cash reserve levy?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
So again, you know, every one of these districts has their own story of why they're here, what they're doing, how they're managing it, how it affects their taxes. That is the privilege of every school board to do that. But that's how they're functioning, just to give you a comparison. There will be a report come out. It's probably 3 or 4 months down the road, and it will have every district, a list of that, of where they're at on their special ed report. I am going to give a disclaimer on the transportation report because we filled it out the best we could. And it really does need to go through the DE's review. Because last year with AB schedules, virtual, time off, you know, how they're going to try and manage all of that and make sense of it and compare it to other districts. All I'm saying is we filled it out the best we could. Are they going to come in and say, yeah, but we're going to use this measure and compare it with this? They certainly could. So once they get through that, then it will be worth looking at. It did raise our cost. It raised our cost per pupil because we were basically spending a similar amount of money on busing and kids were riding every other day in the high school. So it's, you know, how they're going to comprehend all that, I don't know.
So where it talks about transportation not required by law, do those parents, do they have to pay for the busing, or are there exemptions that are made?
What the law is set up to do is the district is not required to bus an elementary student inside of 2 miles. Secondary is
yeah.
farther, but what the district has, ever since that I've known, we've cut that in half. So
Okay.
we voluntarily, they're not required by law, but we can still claim it if we choose to do it.
Okay.
And even if we have, and in the past, we had student fee busing, I can't remember the exact term we used, it's been a couple of years, where they could pay to ride if there was room.
Yeah,
Well,
I remember that.
Now, we're not doing that, but we've got room on some buses and we're doing discretionary. So if they can and it works out, then they're riding for free. But we can still count them.
That's awesome.
So
And then-
there's
I'm sorry.
lots of twists and turns in this as well.
And then the non-public school students, so when, like, the Catholic schools, they're using our buses, but do they pay for that then?
No.
We
That's
provide that.
part of state law that we have to bus non-public students.
Oh, okay.
There are certain things the private school students get that are funded through tax dollars, and I believe the total at the state level is $50 or $60 million is committed to that, and it would be textbooks and transportation and several other things, so.
So do we get reimbursed for that on a per mile basis or our cost basis?
It's based on who the kids are and how far we transport them. It's just the same formula that the state uses to send us money to give to the parents
Okay.
that are driving 3.5 miles to this school, and they have 3 kids in school, and there's a formula of what they can get back. So they use something very similar to that. So that motion has to be approved. Okay.
I didn't want to cut you off. I
No.
was trying not to rush. So, okay. So all three of those things, does anybody have any questions on those? Okay, awesome. Then all those in favor of approving the LEA certified annual reports, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, same sign. Chair votes aye, motion carried. And Michael, because we're not quite done with you, we are going to move on to financial information, which is here. There's no motion here. This is just for information only about this month, so.
All of the information I gave you up to this point was to June 30th last year, and we are in the middle of October, and we are still trying to finish 2021. And still have audit things to finish, and it will be brought to Dr. Lindeman first, and then to the Finance Committee, and then will come to you in December because of the second meeting in November being canceled. So that will finish 2021 in December. And you guys are talking about program of studies for 22, 23. So what I wanted, and because of all of those things that happened during the summer and this time of the year, my reporting mechanism in Forecast 5 is not set up yet because it's dependent on our final report from the audit, so they can build it in. But what I wanted to give you was just an exhibit, the pictures that show what we're doing is following the course that we've chosen. So you look at the general fund, and the orange on page 47, the orange is last year. And that was better than the last 2 years a little bit, if you look at the numbers on the side. But you can see as we started this year with the excess money coming in from ESSER, we are quite a bit above the cash flow level that we have ever been. And that trend should continue all the way through the year, a little bit above the activity from last year. The other minor funds, management is very restricted to property insurance, liability, and workers' comp. And the reason it's down a little bit this year is because we paid the bills earlier than we did last year. But you should see the same level of activity there. The sales tax fund on page 48. We're going to see a jump. Well, that jump last year was because of the bond that we had. And it's gone down during the year, and by the end of September, we have 4.2 million left to pay on Lowell. So out of the balance that's there of 20 million, 16 million is ours still, not committed to anything. And that will then play into the planning for WCCX and Central Remodel. Fund 40 is just the amount of money that we hold in sinking funds to pay bonds, but that is real money that's sitting in banks in our name until we actually pay it. So there's another 17 million sitting there. PEPL on page 49 is a little less activity, I think, last year just because of so much other things going on, plus the Lowell project. That's a priority of sitting down with Marty and planning out what's really going to happen the rest of the year, and we'll get a little better picture of that. But it's sitting with a healthy balance right now because of that. And then the last exhibit is just saying, of all the money that we have, the vast majority of it is in a higher bearing interest account than just what we get at the bank. So that's also another responsibility that we have, and just to show you I also want to go back to this, and this is back to June 30th. And this is showing you by all of the revenue sources, and then a couple pages back, all of the object codes for expenses for 2021 compared to 1920. So you can look through that and see where it changed. Our revenue went up, I don't want to say without looking, about 15 or 16 million, and that's majority is ESSER. And the expenses went up 2.6 million. So they stayed about the same, but we had a lot more revenue to cover it. So that's why the balance is higher. So the expenditures shouldn't show huge differences from the year before. The revenue's well in those special cases. But if you've got areas you want to look at and ask about and have some answers to, this will give you something to compare to. And that's it.
So we'll look forward to December, and there's a little work to be done between now and then, I know, but the auditors are still here, are they still here?
They were here last week,
Okay,
and they're still gathering some information, but 99% of it is gathered, and
Great.
we're just putting it together.
super. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. And for always explaining things for people like me that don't do this for a living, I really appreciate it. So, all of us, yeah. All of us, true, I guess. Sue's pretty good at it, so. All right. Well, that takes us to our last item on the agenda tonight, which I guess we've saved the best for last, but I'm not so sure about that. But the recommended motion this evening, this is our letter of retirement from Dr. Lindeman, and the recommended motion here is that the Board of Education approve the retirement of Superintendent Dr. Jane Lindeman, effective July 1st, 2022.
So moved.
Is it gonna die for a sec, die for a lack of a second? Okay, did you?
I didn't, I'm gonna go no.
All right, you squirrels, I gotta get it. Somebody put it, thank you, Astor.
Second.
All right. All right, who moved?
Reluctantly.
Who moved? Astor moved, and who? Oh, Jesse moved, okay. And Astor seconded, so.
We're gonna get her
Yes,
set up for
yes.
retirement here.
Yes, so Jane, I'm just gonna start by saying, obviously last Wednesday, or Thursday, geez, what day is it? It is with heavy hearts that we accepted you made your announcement, and so tonight we do the formal accepting of that. I guess one of the things that has been super important to me through your tenure, and I don't know why I'm crying, because Sue already said, don't be sad, she's not going anywhere until, she's got a lot of work to do between now and then. But anyway, besides, and I'm gonna let the rest of the board speak to this as well, and all of the accomplishments, but I really believe that the relationships that you have built are second to none. I think the coordination that you have had with our community, the outreach that you've done with our mayor, with our health department, with our community college, with the University of Northern Iowa, are just exceptional. And so those are big shoes to fill. And I don't think you're going to find a finer person who really cultivated and created those. And so for me, that's a huge point of pride and something that I will very much miss. I don't know who went.
Yeah, okay, you're looking my way. Well, and I would say too that I was on Shanley and I were, and Lyle, the only ones here when we hired Jane. And when we first hired her, we knew her as an associate superintendent, and she baked good cinnamon rolls. I knew that. And and she just was. she just seems so smart and confident to me, and I thought that she would make a good leader. And one thing that I really respected about her is that she is so data-driven. And I've never been a data-driven person. I just kind of numbers. I work with numbers, but, and what she did with those numbers and her board in her office, if anyone was privy to see that, she had numbers for everything. And I think that that has changed me into, you got to look at the numbers. They're not everything, because the number is, I don't think a kid's a number, but the numbers of how we can help kids in the way those numbers help us to help kids. I learned that from you, and I think that is something I'll never leave, because it's just it's a good thing, I think. And I also, I was trying to think of one word, because we gave you vision, we gave you our board goals, and you ran with those. And I think with lots of those goals, I would say the one word for your tenure is transformational. I think you transformed and made our ideas into realities. And I appreciate that. And I know that we have, now I looked at her, I'm going to cry. I know that we have, the task of filling your shoes, which we will do, and begrudgingly, but we will do. And to give us 8 years, I think, was just a gift to the district, because that's unheard of in a UEN. And so I so appreciate that consistency, because I do believe that consistency really helps a lot. But and now my last word for you is admiration, because walking with a sister passing away too, and situations with your family, it's a very good thing that you're going to be helpful and be there and be present. So thank you.
Well, I come on the board, just right after you've been hired as our superintendent, and we were going through the big push for the bond vote for the Career Center, and I can remember that night being, where a lot of us were disappointed when the results came back. It really said the community didn't trust us to install this programming. Even though, I thought the research is there in that, but, it didn't just dwindle away. I mean, we found, the vision there from the board and the U was there, and came ideas how to make it work, how to implement it. And I mean, it really is been amazing to watch how you really have spearheaded that project through, along with other capital project we've had to deal with in between. I mean, let's just add an elementary rebuild here, and when we're not planning to. But I mean, being able to manage those things and still everything else that goes on within the role of superintendent is pretty amazing. And I always just respected the job you did in building those relationships to help make Career Center really a go. A lot of other accomplishments on the facility sides. I mean, you look at the work done at Memorial Stadium, the buildings that we help clean up the community by bringing some buildings down and stuff like that, and really help do our part in the community as well. But interesting too, all the big things. Sometimes just the little things. And I listen to, when you talk about, just being in a lobby and seeing a kid that's struggling and taking the time to really sit down and figure out what's going on with the kid. I mean, you have so many tasks in a day, but you know what? In the end, let's find out what's going on with the student here, because back at the end, it is the students that matter, and being able to take the time out. And, I always enjoyed when you always posted your visits to the schools, and you always seemed to take time out to meet the students. The lunch with Lindemans were always a fantastic thing, and I'm very blessed that some of my children got to participate in those. And, sometimes it's still being personable at a level there with, even maybe what some might say is, we don't have time maybe to slow down and work on that because we're busy, but you know what? We do have time. And those kind of things, I was always touched by your willingness to try to capture a moment or make a connection to a student or employee somewhere, so.
Go right
There's
down the
no
row.
going around. Okay, I don't know what you're gonna say, Lyle. I think everything's gonna be taken, or Shanley. Right. I guess, I'm not the youngest getting on the board, but I'm getting kind of old. Yeah, but right, 4 years. But I have really appreciate the watching your growth. Like I have really seen a lot of change because you have been put in a lot of situations that nobody could ever imagine to be in. But your leadership, your strength, your integrity have been tested. However, you have been pushed through. So greatly appreciate that. That is a skill that nobody can ever teach, but you have done it. And thank you so much for doing that. I also appreciate you are sometimes on an island by yourself, but you're still willing to come back over to our island and say, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and make cookies. I'm going to go ahead and pass out backpacks. I mean, like, you're still present. You still put yourself out there, present in the community. And thank you, because I have seen it just grow and grow and grow. And so I don't know what your next chapter will be, whatever that will be. You will not be forgotten. We'll appreciate everything you've done and set the foundation for the next person who has to fill the shoes. So appreciate you. Thank you. Yes.
Y'all waiting on me? I was hoping Lyle would go, so I didn't have that much to say.
I see you've got notes.
A few. I wrote a little paragraph, but I'll try to wing it. Just as we start this process reluctantly, I just think about the longevity of a superintendent, but just being in a district as complex as ours, and being in a position of that magnitude for that long, that just speaks to you and your dedication and determination. And I don't know, so thank you for that. I know when I got on the board 4 years ago, I didn't know what to expect. Never thought I'd be sitting in this spot, but I think having a superintendent that was willing to walk us through. I remember you setting up the board, the mini board sessions with Indy and myself, and just walking us, helping us each step of the way, and I appreciate that. And I do want to say something to the board as well. I'm extremely confident that this board will push forward, bring forth the best candidates for the district. I know you genuinely care about the district, but I don't know if you remember when we had our one-on-one, you told me something, and I'm sure you told everybody else this as well. And it just goes to your character. The last thing you told me was, I want the next superintendent to be the best superintendent that Waterloo has ever had. And to say that you're committed to Waterloo and that you and your family will stay here, and you want your children to be a part of this district and graduate from this district, with all you have going on and some of the reasons why you decided that this was time, I think that also speaks volumes too, to your character. So, like I said, I've personally learned a lot in these 4 years, but I also look forward to helping the district move forward. So I won't get all emotional because I'm a crier as well. but we do truly appreciate you. And thank you.
So I've only got to know Jane as the COVID superintendent. So there was, like 2 months that I was here before that. And I don't understand how you were able to do everything that you did. I still don't. I don't know if you don't sleep, I don't understand how this works because on top of everything else that is expected of a superintendent and everything else that you personally do because you feel it's your responsibility as a superintendent, not just everything that's on a list. You care about our kids. You want your kids in our schools. I can't think of a better compliment to our district than you wanting your own children there. And I think that your example is what we will all be able to keep in our mind when we look, because the bar is really high, and we're not going to settle for anything below that. And as the baby of the board, and as the baby, I've appreciated going through my growing pains with me, and I think we both grew from that, so. Thank you, Jane.
Okay, well, thank you for, thank you for a successful 8 years. Several previous superintendents served 6 years. The extra 2 years is particularly notable because of the situation the last 2 years. So we were just really fortunate to have an experienced hand to navigate through these last 2 years, which I can't imagine what it would have been if it would have been a new superintendent at that time after 6 years. So I'm not going to go through the lengthy litany of accomplishments, but talk just a little bit about the change. You know, change is typically challenging, and with your departure, it certainly will be initiation of a new superintendent. We've actually been fortunate because most districts, I think the average is like 3.5 years. So we have infrequently, 8 years, 6 years before that, 6 years. So we're fortunate in that respect because to really, as with any new coach, it takes a little while to come up to speed to really get running at the pace you want to. So even though there will be changes, most things will not change. The mission statement is not going to change. The board's vision, I don't anticipate changing. I expect 7 of us to be here, after the election. So that's not going to dramatically change. The strategic plan will be tweaked, but isn't going to dramatically change. The process of setting the superintendent's goals. The process won't change. The goals will change, just like they have every year of your tenure. And so that's up to the board to decide what the focus, for the next years to be. But we have a very good board. I've experienced otherwise. So I can speak. I can speak to that with some credibility. But yeah, most things are gonna stay the same. We'll have new leadership, and with new leadership always comes new opportunity. Everybody has their own strengths. So we're sad about your departure, but we look forward to the next superintendent.
Do you want to say anything? Yeah, we can vote.
You can vote, and then I'll do mine during my
Okay,
superintendent report.
perfect. Yep, that's fine. Yeah, that's why I said it's like bittersweet, so. All right, well, all those in favor then of approving Dr. Lindman's retirement, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
In 9 months.
In 9 months.
In 9 months.
Yes, July 1st of 2022. All those opposed, same sign. And chair votes aye. With regret, the motion carries. Okay, So I can turn it over to you for your
Okay,
report.
Well, I'm gonna have to make it short and sweet because I don't know how long my emotions will persist. But so first of all, thank you for all those really nice comments. I'm going to tell you there's a lot to do yet, and so the fact that I have until July 1 is exciting for me because I think the word that comes to me is steadfast. I think you're going to see me being really steadfast going forward. I keep asking the questions with the groups that I'm working with, saying, you know, what are we gonna get done between now and July 1? Because we have a lot to do, and I honestly think that's why Thursday was hard, because I don't think a lot of people saw it coming. And in a way, as I went home on Thursday night, I really took that as kind of a compliment. I really did, because so many times you've heard the phrase, I think there's probably a meme about this, you know, so-and-so retired 2 years ago, but they just are still continuing to come to work. And the fact that it came as such a shock to me, I told Kingsley and Stephanie, I said, I'm just so proud of that because nobody saw it coming. And that means that we were full steam ahead. And I think that you have my word that you will continue to see full steam ahead because, Lyle, you said it so well. The work isn't going to change regardless. I mean, the leader might change, but the work is not going to change. And maybe how it's accomplished or, you know, that. But the work is going to change, and the strategic plan, I think that's why we were so steadfast in getting that strategic plan done. So, you know, it has really been a privilege to lead. I've joked very often that this was the job I did not apply for this. I didn't go seeking this job, but it has been a really, really great experience for me. And India, you mentioned the growth. You are right. Boy, did I grow in this position. I really have. And honestly, it wasn't even just the first year that I grew. I mean, I've grown this year. I grew last year. I grew, you know, and not just because of COVID. To be honest, this doesn't have very much to do with COVID. So it has really been a great opportunity. I'm leaving a better leader than when I came in. And I don't know where my next chapter will be, but I know it'll be here in Waterloo. So thanks for letting me stay, and thanks for letting me lead, and full steam ahead till July 1.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, board, time for comments. Now that we've already had them, I'm gonna flip the script. I'm gonna go down here to Lyle. Nothing? Okay. Stacy?
I just want to remind people that we have conferences.
See my.
So my daughter and I just sat down before I came and we went through, because it's so cool. You get a link, an email link, and you go in and you can schedule all the teachers, and you can do in-person or you can do virtual. I just encourage everybody to do that. Also, just a reminder that the Blackhawk County COVID rate is still very high. It's 9.5. So I'd like to encourage people to wear their masks when you're in enclosed areas with a lot of people. Thank you.
Aster?
No further comments.
Okay. Sue?
I just want to congratulate the East and West High bands. They had the competition this past weekend, and kind of the culmination of their seasons, but those kids work hard. I mean, I live by West, and they're out there 2 nights a week practicing, and it's a lot of work, and their shows look good this year. I only got to see each band once, but and they did well. They both got D1 ratings, right? Yeah, that's what I heard. So, and how did they do at Valley West? I didn't hear.
Not as well.
Yeah.
They didn't rank as well, or they didn't place as well. But I heard that their marching was excellent.
Good,
So
good.
and I volunteered all day for the state band, and I got to be the person to direct them onto the field, and it was. Kingsley and Stephanie are tired of hearing me talk about this, right? Because I just am a marching band junkie. Well, just any
mom.
I am a band mom, and so I just absolutely loved it. And so it was super fun. And I knew when they performed, they were gonna get a Division I because they looked so solid. So it was really great.
Really great, awesome.
Mallory said 3 plumes fell out though when they were doing the headbanging.
Oh, yeah, they were. I didn't see those fall out. They were good.
Yeah.
So she's that like weirdly detailed too, so.
Yes, and then I did just want to comment because the last meeting I got some emails that were not in. I think some of my words were taken out of context when I was speaking about the recess and lack of lunches, and so people were thinking said the Waterloo school kids are different and shouldn't deserve lunches and recesses extra, and that was not at all my intent, so I apologize if it did come out that way. My intent is that I am totally in favor of looking at what all other districts do with lunch and to take a look, but to maybe come up with a creative and innovative plan for Waterloo and for our kids that works best for us and not just always copycat what other people do. So I just wanted to clarify that because in no means did I at all mean that Waterloo kids don't deserve lunch or recess. So, thank you.
I would just make a comment from, it's nice to see Dr. Pappas bring his agenda here for the trip to Illinois, but, I think a challenge to our state. I think, a lot of our kids, sometimes they barely get out of the town they live in. And to have restrictions on opportunity to be able to travel to other places that students in other states do have the opportunity, I think is really holding us back as a state. I mean, when you look at right from where kids can take a team from Kentucky to Florida for spring break so they can play in a ball tournament. This may be something the kids never get to experience, but we, limit what our schools can do. And I think it's really, maybe when transportation was more difficult, but, with the road system stuff to get places now, I think there's more opportunity to really open up what we allow our school districts to do and give more opportunity to our children to maybe see the world and maybe showcase also some of our students to the rest of the country. So just like to see some more reform in that area and really, some action by the state to really improve upon opportunities for our students. So.
No comment.
All right, well, everybody took all mine, so.
Well, and would you kind of explain about, just to the public as far as what the board will be doing as far
Yep,
as,
so we will be gathering some information, we'll be talking to some search firms, and hopefully, here in the next few days, we can make an announcement about that, once we've had a little bit more time to meet and everybody's had a little bit more time to, there's a lot of information that's been, a lot of information that's been thrown our way. So, yes, and then once we move forward with that, then we can get into a timeline, and we'll be sure to share that with the public, and there'll be regular updates and how we determine, whether we add a spot. I don't know if we'll put it in the school board meeting or if we'll just do press releases. I'm not really sure, but we'll get that information disseminated, and of course be collecting, information from our stakeholders as well about what the new superintendent and all of that will look like going forward.
Thank you.
Yep. Sorry, should have done that first, so. All right, well, there being no further information to come before the board, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Sue, and second, thanks, and all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, we are adjourned. Good night, be safe, be well.